Okay, welcome to those that are viewing us from home. This is the regular session meeting of the Poquoson City Council. If you joined us earlier, you saw a work session where we discussed a change in the Wythe Creek Road project with the Virginia Department of Transportation. We're actually going to amend our agenda in a few minutes and add that action item to this agenda. But I'll call this meeting to order. This is our regular session for Monday, June the 8th. If we could all please rise, I'll lead you in the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day and for the many blessings we've received in our city throughout the past several months. It's not lost on us, Father, that our staff has worked hard, our citizens have worked hard, especially our public safety officials have worked hard to get us through this crisis. We thank you for their leadership. You are the one who enables us all. We also ask that we never forget those who are serving in our military, especially those who are serving us in foreign lands or on ships out in the middle of the ocean. Bless them and their families as we move forward through this epidemic. And we do all of this in your Son's name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, trying to get this straight. For those of you, again, that are joining us from home, you'll notice that there's more people on your screen than what it has been in the past, but they're different people, okay? So the council's a little bit more spread out in the room. That gives you a good angle of that. And we have some more of our staff as we head to what we believe will be the last, and I'll probably eat these words, but we hope this will be the last of our meetings where the public can't come into council chambers with us. But we're back up to just about full force. We do have Councilwoman Andrews on the phone. And do we need to call a roll since we're all here, or just Jana? Just Jana. All right.
Councilwoman Andrews?
Here.
Thank you.
All right. And with that said, before we move further with business, Council's decided that we would like to consider amending the agenda. Councilman Green, have you got a motion to do so?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we amend our meeting agenda for tonight to add item 3 under new business, a resolution concurring with Wythe Creek Road scope change.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded that we modify the agenda to add that item under new business. Questions or comments? Seeing none. Evie, please.
Councilman Southall,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman,
Aye.
Councilman Hucks,
Aye.
Councilman Green,
Aye.
Councilman Cannella,
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews,
Aye.
Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay. All right, we have some presentations this evening. I think that will shed a lot of light as we're moving forward into the summer months. First and foremost is a briefing from Dr. Jennifer Parrish, school superintendent, and this presentation will be about the changes to the middle school and other projects that the school administration and school board together are making. So.
Yes, well, it's a pleasure to be here, and it's so nice to see all of you, or almost all of you here. It's been a while since I've seen you all, so I'm always happy to be here with you. I wanted to update you as to a decision that was made recently by the school board in terms of the middle school project, and then how we hope to move forward in recovering the roofs of both the primary school and the high school. At our last school board meeting, the school board approved the transfer of $587,300 from the primary school roof project over into the middle school project. I recommended this to the school board and they did approve it because there really were some additional items that we need to get done as part of the renovation and modernization of the middle school, and by shifting those funds over, we're getting everything that we really need and want to get done in that middle school. I'll tell you, it's a very exciting project right now, and I am very much looking forward to coming back and seeing the finished results. This does mean that for that middle school renovation, we do have over $20 million now in the project, and I thank all of you because that's because of the funds that you have provided for the middle school project as well as for the CCIP, which allowed us to move the funding from the roofs, both the high school and primary school roof, into the middle school project. The other part of this presentation deals with the two roofs that you may remember at a work session that we held earlier this year when we moved the high school roof into funds for that roof into the middle school project. I said that we recognized by doing this that we would likely be moving the high school roof onto the CCIP at some point for your approval again. In the meantime, we've been doing a lot of research as a school division to look to see what we could do perhaps to help to cover the cost of those roofs while at the same time putting solar panels on the roofs and becoming engaged in using solar electricity for our schools. We're working right now with a solar company to get more information, but we're hoping that we'll be able to establish a public-private partnership, educational, through the Educational Infrastructure Act, or called a PPEA, that would enable us to have somebody do the work of recovering those roofs, and then after that going into what's called I'm using the Power Purchase Act, which is different from the PPEA, it's the PPA, that would enable us essentially to pay for the cost of the work on those roofs through the savings that we would see in our utilities bills because of going to solar. So that would help to offset the actual cost of the roofs over a 25-year period. We would, as a school division, have to provide some additional funding from our operating budget. At a first look, it looks like it might initially be about $40,000, and then after that, it would pick up maybe about $1,000 a year. The division does have funding for that at this time. So we're very optimistic that we can do this. If we're able to do this through the PPA, it would not materially affect your debt service. We would take up some of your debt capacity, but we actually would not be coming to you for funds to do the roof because we'd be covering that ourselves through the savings and through the operating budget. So there's a difference between actually then we wouldn't need to come to you to ask you to put it back on the CCIP for actual funding from you. So that's what we're very optimistic that we can make that work. We've been in conversations throughout the year, both with your financial advisor as well as the accounting firm that does our audit, your audits and our audits, because we do that jointly, as well as our school board attorney recently. So we're optimistic that we're going to be able to go into a PPEA and then ultimately end up in the PPA and be able to fund those recovering of those roof projects themselves, which come to a bit over $2 million to do the high school and the primary school roof. And that would include doing the metal part of the primary school roof as well. So I wanted to bring this to you tonight. I did, as you know, provide a letter last week that I know you have in the packet that you received, but I wanted to be able to explain that to you a little bit more clearly in person. I do want to say to you, this could be the last time I actually address you all, but I cannot thank you enough for the support that you continue to provide the schools, certainly working with us as we make these adjustments to the CCIP and continue to work through the middle school project. So you may have some questions. I do want to update you in the middle school project. We are at about the 65% design point with the middle school. We actually have a big meeting later this week, and that will include the new superintendent so that we'll know where we are in that project. So we are moving forward and very excited about the work that's going to be done. It will go out to bid, we think, late in the fall. By then it should be out there. I will say to you, I think there's some sign that unfortunately the economy is not good for us for so many other reasons, but the only thing the economy might be good for are keeping some costs down on that construction project that's coming up. So there's a little bright spot in the midst of the recession that we're facing right now. So with that said, I'm certainly here for any questions that you all might have.
Okay, council, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing specific to your presentation, Dr. Parrish, but I just wanted to thank you personally as a former student of your school system and now member of this council for all you've done. I made those comments, but was told by my family when I walked down the hall after the meeting they couldn't hear me. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that, and thank you for all you've done for our city and school system.
Well, thank you. Certainly a pleasure for me to see one of our former students since I was here sitting at the table. So, and while I appreciate the support that you've provided for our school division, I can't thank each of you enough for the support you've provided me over the last 12 years. I have said to the new superintendent, Mr. Tillett, that he just couldn't come to a better place. And I really, from my heart, I thank you. It's been an incredible 12 years, and I will carry it with me always. And I'll still be in the city of Poquoson, and so hopefully I will see you. But thank you so much, and I do want to publicly thank, while I have the microphone, Randy Wheeler. You have an incredible city manager. I know that you know that, but the relationship that we've had and the ability we've had to work through some pretty tough situations in the last 12 years, a real credit to the leadership that he shows and his support of the school division and all of those, everything that's associated with it. So a big thank you. And with that, I'll turn the mic to somebody else.
Thank you, Jennifer. All right, the next presentation is Mr. Kyle Law from Davenport. And I wanted, as you come up to the podium, I want to also thank you for the help that you've provided. While council can take a lot of credit for the $20 million for the middle school and the refinancing, it's been through your firm's guidance and your leadership with us in New York that has enabled a lot of this. So I want to give you that as you lead in. You're going to give us only good news.
That's right.
Okay, but no, I just seriously thank you for what you've done for the city and your team's leadership as well, your firm's leadership. So
We certainly appreciate it, Mr. Mayor, and I think in fairness, it's really, a testament. I'll kick it right back to the council between Randy and Tanya in terms of city manager and finance director. You've got just an incredible team here. And I think you really see that, as you mentioned New York, in terms of the credit ratings that you have and you've been able to achieve. When you think about the fact that we are a relatively small city and you've got a AAA credit rating that is just really phenomenal. And I think what you'll hear tonight as we talk through this, I know you have printed copies and it will be up on the screen for the public. But we have tonight is an opportunity that's really driven by those credit ratings. If we didn't have the very strong, very solid credit ratings that you've earned over the years, you wouldn't have the opportunity to do what we're talking about tonight, which is really to make sure we safeguard, sort of the financial resources, the fund balance, and things of those nature in these highly uncertain times from an economic standpoint. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to walk through the presentation, but I think you brought up, I think rightly so, thinking about New York, and really what we need to say that is the city's credit standing, its credit ratings, and what we're going to talk about tonight is driven in large part by the very, very good credit ratings that we do have. So we'll talk through here on the next couple pages. We'll go to page number 1, just for a little bit of background. I know you've seen this in your council package, but we'll walk through and certainly answer any questions that you have. So on page number 1, background, I think you know who we are selfishly between myself and David. So one of the things we've been doing a lot of the last couple months, really like 2 or 3 months since the world has changed so substantially, is to be thinking about how we can strategically leverage the fact that rates are so low right now. So Dr. Parrish mentioned maybe one of the bright spots of this economic situation is hopefully, our fingers crossed, lower construction costs. Another bright spot is lower interest rates. And so while there's a lot of challenge out there, a lot of uncertainty, what we're talking about tonight is an opportunity to take advantage of some of those extraordinarily low rates. We'll show you what those look like in the next couple pages. And safeguard the city's cash flows, safeguard your budget, safeguard your fund balance, and again, sort of being I think we like to think of this as a bit of a hope for the best, but plan for the worst kind of scenario, and we're able to do some things we'll show you in the next couple pages. So next couple bullet points here on page number 1. I think it goes without saying that fiscal year 2021, while we were hoping certainly for a fast recovery, there's a lot of uncertainty right now. So that sort of underpins a lot of what we're talking about. Interest rates are effectively at all-time lows. We'll show you what that looks like in the next page or so. And so we've alluded to this, but what we're going to recommend to you, what we've gone through a process, is to talk about refinancing and even restructuring a little bit a small portion of the city's overall debt profile to bring the interest rate down and also to smooth some of the payments out to make sure that as we go into fiscal year 2021, which can be a very uncertain year, and really in fairness, fiscal year 2022 and future, there's just a lot of things we don't know right now, to make sure that we can safeguard having a structurally balanced budget, safeguard meeting our financial policies, especially with respect to fund balance. So with that, we'll flip over to page number 2. And we mentioned this on the prior page, but hopefully a visual is helpful here just in terms of where interest rates are relative to some history. So left-hand side of the page, we are looking here at tax-exempt interest rates, which is primarily where we as a city are able to borrow, not in every instance, but primarily where we're able to borrow. And you see where that trend has been, in this case, from the year 2000 until now. Kind of a squiggly line. We've had a couple crises here that have passed through over the last 20 years thereabouts, and we're facing another one now. But I think if you take your eye to the right-hand side of that graph, if you're a visual person or a numbers person, you look at that, and you've seen, in this case, this benchmark interest rate drop from somewhere in the 4.5% range to down and around 2% over the course of the last year. So that is literally having this particular benchmark interest rate over the course of the last couple months. Moving to page 3, we'll show you just one other graph. This has to deal with taxable interest rates. So the refinancing we're going to talk about tonight, a portion of it is taxable and a portion of it is tax exempt. So that's why we've shown you both those graphs. But I think both graphs will show you a similar story, similar situation. Since really the beginning of 2019 and really accelerating in 2020 as this crisis hit, we've seen interest rates just fall through the floor. So what we're showing you here on page number 3 is the 10-year U.S. Treasury. It's kind of a bellwether for taxable interest rates in the market. A year ago, that rate was probably in around 1.8%. At that point, that was historically a very low level. Today, it sits basically 1% below that. So it's effectively as low as it's ever been. And again, that's driven by the uncertainty in the economy, the uncertainty in the world right now. And what we are trying to do is we deal with that uncertainty from a budget perspective, is use some of these low interest rates combined with the fact that we've got very good credit ratings to help safeguard the city's budgets, the city's cash flows, and ultimately the city's credit ratings. So we'll flip over to page 4. We call this the executive summary here. I think I've hit on a couple of these points here already in terms of our credit ratings and how important cash and fund balance is. I may pause for a minute just on the cash and fund balance side. So you've heard from us enough over the years that I think you know both our perspective as well as the credit markets and the rating agencies and just how important maintaining a very strong fund balance is to our credit rating and how important that is to the rating agencies. And so that's the case in a good environment, and it's even more so the case in a challenging environment. So a critical piece of what we're trying to do with this tonight, as we've been working with your staff over the last couple months, is to make sure we can conserve, safeguard, and maybe even add to a little bit our existing fund balance as per our policy to make sure that as we go into fiscal year 2021, if indeed we have a situation where the economy continues to be maybe a little lackluster, we've got the reserves, basically set aside to handle that to the extent we get a surprise. And so I think that's from a planning perspective, the mentality we take right now is let's plan for, I hate to use the term war, plan for a bad case scenario, knowing that if we have a better case scenario, what we will have done is simply provided some additional financial flexibility for purposes of 21 into 22 and those future fiscal years. So what are we really talking about doing here? In the third bullet point, what we've identified is about $2.6 million of your existing debt that we can refinance, bring the rate down, the fixed interest rate, and thus flatten out some of your debt service payments. We'll show you what that looks like in a couple pages here. I think it'll be helpful to see visually. But basically what we end up doing is, we use the term conserve here, conserve about $1.3 million in debt service payments over the next 5 fiscal years. So that's starting in fiscal year 21 out through 2025. We'd in essence conserve about $1.3 million by virtue of this refinancing. The thought process is a good portion of that, at least to start with, could go to continue building our fiscal stability reserve. So as a city council, you've got your adopted policies. You know those well, certainly between the city manager and finance director. They know those well. One of those is to have a fiscal stability reserve. The council's done a great job the last couple of years, during the good years, to build towards and start putting those dollars away into. We understand as we work through this fiscal years, in Poquoson, we got hit with the same crisis everybody else did. We may end up dipping into a little bit of that fiscal stability reserve, which is why it's there. But a major part of why we are talking about this refinancing is to try and proactively free up some dollars such that if we get into 2021 and we have a negative surprise or the world doesn't track the way we want it to in terms of revenues and expenditures, we haven't taken so much out of our fiscal stability reserve that we suddenly are faced with a bigger problem, which is having to dig into the unassigned fund balance. And so a major point, a major key reason we're talking about doing what we're doing right now is to make sure we've got dollars to basically replenish, in essence, the fiscal stability reserve such that as we work through 21 into 22 and all the uncertainty in the world right now, we know we've got some cushion relative to all the uncertainty in the world in that fiscal stability reserve. So how do we do that? Again, we're going to refinance about $2.6 million. Right now the city has about 35.6 rounding off in terms of total debt, so we're just taking a portion of that and we'll be refinancing that. Given how low interest rates are right now, we've gone through a competitive bidding process like we've done many times in the past, went out to the banking community, local banks, regional banks, national banks, got all those responses back. And we'll share the results with you in the next couple pages. But basically, we're able to take the interest rate on that portion of your debt to be refinanced from about a 272, if you see that in kind of the bottom third of the page there, down to, I'm going to round off, about a 219. So we're going to take about 0.5%, that's 50 basis points, off of the interest rate on that $2.6 million worth of debt. On top of that, we will retain the ability to be able to prepay or refinance the debt within 3 years. And so a major component, anytime we're looking at any bond transaction, whether it's for new money or refinances, is we want to understand both the interest rate, but also understand what is our flexibility to either pay that loan off, refinance like we're doing right now, maybe even restructure a little bit like we're doing right now. And so with our winning bidder, we'll talk through the next couple of pages, we retain the ability to be able to refinance that debt within about 3 years. So we get a fixed interest rate, we're lowering the interest rate on the loan, we're going to conserve about $1.3 million in cash flow over the next 5 years. We're also going to maintain the ability to prepay, refinance, restructure within the next 3 years.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask a question? Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted some clarification on, is it to do with the prepayments of why it's such a small portion that we're refinancing? What is the reason for such a small portion of our overall that we're refinancing?
So it's a good question. If we could do a larger portion and save more money, we would do that. So what we really try to do is target just the portion of your existing debt that'll provide us with that cash flow relief and also let us bring the interest rate down. So it's a good clarification, because frankly, if we could refinance the overall debt profile and bring the interest rate down and save money, we would do that. We just have been able to lock in such favorable interest rates over the last 5 or 6 years as we've done other loans, that the rest of the outstanding debt just doesn't produce any savings right now, which isn't a negative. It just means that we've been able to achieve rates that are arguably so low on those old existing loans that only this portion right now is really the portion that produces the savings.
And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think on slide 7, when you get down to future money available for another council or whatever, and it preserves the fact that your debt service will fall off,
That's correct.
right? So in other words, we don't take the total debt, redistribute it, and not have flexibility in the future in 2028 as a city.
That is exactly right, Mr. Mayor, and I think that gets to the point here in terms of, on page number 5, we talked about not extending the final maturity of the city's overall debt profile. We know by virtue of the balance of the middle school, we still have some additional dollars to raise to complete that project. Other city priorities, there's always going to be something. We wanted to make sure that we safeguarded the fund balance on the front end of things, but also didn't push things, any farther into the future for future generations, or future city councils to have to worry about. So I think it's an excellent point. So I think to that end, another couple points for you. By virtue of doing this, if you recall a couple years ago, which I know, Mayor, you remember well because we went to New York and went through all this, the overall plan for the middle school and the balance of the city capital projects, we put in place an initial real estate tax increase, and that was really going to be all that we needed in order to accomplish that entire plan. And so something we want to make sure we safeguarded by virtue of this is to make sure we don't need to go back to taxpayers when the balance of the middle school and other projects are needed and say, hey, we need an additional penny or a couple pennies in the real estate tax rate for purposes of finalizing those projects. That's not the case, and something we want to make sure we safeguarded within here. So the original plan that was put in place basically in the 2018 time period continues to hold true with respect to funding the middle school and other capital projects. So third bullet point here on page number 5, we mentioned the concept of both refinancing and restructuring. So when we talk about refinancing, we're talking about as a higher rate to a lower rate. Restructuring is where we are reshaping a bit. And I think the mayor found the right page here to show this visually, the shape of the city's debt profile. And so we're going to go from a higher rate to a lower rate. We're also going to shape the city's debt profile such that our payments are lower in 21, 22, the next couple of years, and they're flat thereafter, as opposed to kind of a declining structure. And we'll show you what that looks like visually. In terms of the overall impact, in terms of the cost over the life of this, there's a present value, what we call a present value cost of about $75,000 of doing this. And that is driven by the fact that we are doing that reshaping of the city's debt profile. So if you said, what is the trade-off here? The trade-off really is to make sure that we free up dollars starting in the 2021 budget to be able to put into and conserve for our fund balance and our fiscal stability reserve. And you say, what is the cost of doing that, knowing that the fund balance and the reserve is the most important piece, at least from a financial perspective for the rating agencies, and the cost of doing that is about $75,000 over an 8-year time period. So you can do the math on that. It's not a particularly material impact to the budget in any given year when you look at it over the life of it. And that's how a present value calculation works. It basically helps us equate not just the total amount of payments over the life, but basically when do those payments occur. So then we go to page number 6, a couple other details for you. Top of the page, in terms of the results of our bidding process. So we talked about the fact we went through a competitive bidding process like we have done many times with the city in the past. Pleased to report that we've got 6 competitive bids back, and you see who those banks are at the top of the page. And it's a nice combination of national banks, a couple local banks, others that we would consider regional banks. And so again, I think that speaks to the banking community's comfort with the city of Poquoson. Your credit ratings are very helpful in that. This loan we were talking about will not have a rating on it, but certainly every one of these banks, especially in this environment, does all their homework with respect to the credit profile and the financial situation of any local government they're going to make a loan to. We have seen banks get much pickier over the course of the last 3 months. And so I think, again, another area whereby your credit ratings, your financial standing are paying off for you, and that is in a nice turnout from the banking institution. So we've highlighted here Chase Bank. They were clearly the best bidder of the various options. We'll talk about interest rates here in a second, but they were fairly substantially better than any of the other 5 banks that did put a bid in. Middle of the page here, we talked about $2.6 million that we're refinancing. You see that is comprised really of a portion of our 2012 bonds and all of our outstanding 2013 bonds. And the council's question, how did we come up with those? It's really just the slices of your existing debt that would produce the savings that we were looking for. And so in essence, what we have tonight is an ability to lock in the results that we'll show you on the next page. And we've talked about the bank in this case, Chase Bank, has held their rates today through tomorrow. And so with council's action tonight, again, obviously happy to answer the questions that you have, let you deliberate as needed. But we could do, with council's blessing, is we have a resolution in front of you that was drafted by the bond attorney in terms of St. Anderson. Adopt that and thus lock in the interest rate tomorrow. So I believe you received some information last week that had been preliminary. That was on purpose, and so what you have is a little bit updated from what was in your council package. Rates moved up a tad by virtue of the unemployment number on Friday. But I think big picture, we're in very much the same range as we were in that preliminary information. So if you go to page number 7, maybe the fourth page, in the booklet, you can kind of see.
Hey, Kyle, let me cut in for just 1 second. Is this coming out on air? I apologize, Kyle, for,
Yeah, this any better?
yeah, to make sure you turn that one off so we don't get any feedback.
Is that good?
You can just take that with you. There's a trash can back there, okay?
All right, well, hopefully this is a little bit better.
Is it? Well, before I say we claiming victory, is that better? Jana, can you hear?
It should be clicked on. Is it on? Green on?
I'm not listening through the TV because it causes feedback,
Okay,
so
but
I'm listening through my phone.
All right, but you can hear over what?
Test.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, Kyle. You come right here.
How about this? There we go. All right.
There you go.
Technology and IT were not, there we go, that sounds better. Okay, so on page number 7, and so, again, potentially the most important page in the booklet here, and I think the mayor already kind of found it for us. What we're showing on page number 7 is really how this flows through the city's overall debt profile. So we've got our $2.6 million that we're refinancing. It's going to go from a higher rate to a lower rate. It's going to be fixed rate for the life of the loan. It's going to be an 8-year loan. And I think if you look on the right-hand side here, we've got this graphic. And what that graphic and table is showing is a before and after of the city's existing debt profile. So the brown line, if you can kind of make that out on the screen and in the booklets you have in front of you, the brown line is the city's existing debt service before we do anything at all. And so you see it's kind of got this gradual little slope down over the next couple of years, and really drops off in 2028 into 2029. And so what this refinancing will do is get us to a position whereby our debt service will be the green bars. You see some dark green bars on the bottom with a couple light green bars on the top. That is the after, meaning after the refinancing and restructuring. That's what it looks like. And so you compare that to the brown line, and what we've basically done is taken a 2021 debt service payment that would have been about $3.7, almost $3.8 million, and made it more like $3.4 million. So in the process, that frees up, and we use that term frees up, about $340,000 in fiscal year 2021. Again, with the idea being that to the extent that we need to use some of the fiscal stability reserve in this fiscal year, we have thus proactively freed up some dollars in 2021 with which to replenish that use of the fiscal stability reserve. And then, again, if you look at the graphic there, you say, okay, is there going to be a spike? Is there a surprise in the future? Is there a problem in terms of future debt service or future councils? The answer to that is no, because the debt service level basically is just that. It's level for the next couple of years. It's been flattened out, and so we've taken that decline that was going to happen over the next 5 or 7 years in kind of gradual little bits and pieces here and there, and we've just gone ahead and accelerated that decline so we get the advantage of it now, but still keep, to the mayor's point, the aggregate overall debt payout for the city the same, and still keep the same basic shape. I'm going to use that term, shape to that debt profile. So we come back and think about financing the rest of the middle school, financing other capital projects. We've got the same basic continuum to work around in terms of how we fit that other debt for those projects around. So again, you see that all maybe visually, hopefully maybe that's helpful, Mayor. But that really is what we're talking about doing. Flattening things out, taking things from a higher rate to a lower rate. We have basically an 8-year loan here that really gets divided into 2 loans, and so you'll see that within your resolution and ordinance. All with the mindset and the goal of knowing we have such uncertainty right now in the economy, such uncertainty within the budget. Let's make sure we conserve those dollars so we're able to put them in the fiscal stability reserve, or really replace them within the fiscal stability reserve. So with that, on page number 8, our next steps, and then happy to answer any other questions that council may have. On the top of page 8, this evening, I'm here to present this for you. And then again, Sands Anderson, your bond counsel, has put together the appropriate legal documents that, with your blessing and your vote tonight, would allow us to move forward, lock in the rate with the bank, and thus move to closing. So there's not too many moving pieces from here. This is the only action we would need of council. And then between ourselves, Sands Anderson working closely, obviously with your staff and attorney, over the balance of June, we'd work to kind of get the numbers finalized and get all the documents done and closed by the end of June. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to pause there. I realize it's a lot of information in a short time period, but answer any questions that you or any member of council may have.
Okay. So I'll open the floor. I don't have any other questions personally. So Councilman Southall, anything?
I have no questions. Very clear presentation. Thank you.
Councilman Cannell? Councilman Hux?
I do have a question.
Go right ahead, sir.
Mr. Law, excellent presentation. Thank you. Mr. Moore, as city attorney, do you have any insight, any suggestions, advice?
Sands Anderson knows how to draw these lines and how to do the lines. They're all done and done grateful.
Very good. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Mr. Vice Mayor? Councilman Green? Jana? Any questions?
Could you just repeat your answer to Thomas's question about why we're not refinancing more at the lower rate? It broke up a little bit in your intervention, so I kind of missed the middle section.
Yes, it would be happy to. So the only reason really we're not refinancing more is because we've been able to achieve over the last several years with the majority of the debt that we've done, meaning we've done much of it in the last couple of years, we've been able to achieve such low rates that even as low as rates are today, we just couldn't save any more dollars in the way that we'd like to. So what we've basically done is identified just the pieces that will help the budget, bring the rate from a higher rate to a lower rate, but leave in place those pieces that aren't producing any savings for us.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. If no other questions, Kyle, I really appreciate your time. And this is an item on the agenda, and we'll get to it in just a few minutes. Just in case there's a question that comes up as we approach that item on the agenda, if you'd hang out with us, we would appreciate it.
I'd be happy to.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I've lost my place on the agenda. We have one more presentation this evening, and that is from Mr. Dave Callis. And Dave, you're going to talk to us about Community Development Block Grant application for small business assistance. Welcome.
Mr. Mayor, good evening, members of council. Staff is very pleased to provide an update on a small business assistance program or grant opportunity the city is preparing to engage. Recently, the city of Poquoson was contacted by Wanda Freilich, projects coordinator for York County Housing and Neighborhood Revitalization, to inquire about Poquoson's potential interest in partnering with York County and the city of Williamsburg on a regional community development block grant. Funding has been provided by the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development to assist small businesses negatively impacted by the COVID-19 crisis, and localities are currently eligible to request up to $500,000 in non-matching grant funds, which are provided as reimbursements to qualifying businesses. Many small businesses in Poquoson have suffered financially during the COVID-19 crisis, as we know. Given the extent of these negative impacts to these businesses, the city of Poquoson is applying for this community development block grant. If awarded, the grant will provide financial reimbursement to eligible small businesses who have incurred unanticipated costs to meet state mandated requirements for reopening and safe operation during the COVID-19 pandemic. Examples of qualifying expenses for this grant include signage related to social distancing requirements, masks for employees and customers, sanitizing supplies and equipment, any structural modifications to enhance social distancing, and online payment processing costs. In order to apply for the grant, the city of Poquoson will need to do the following: provide a letter of interest from the locality to the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development, enter into a memorandum of understanding with York County. The MOU would designate York County as the regional grant administrator for the project. York County has already agreed to serve as fiscal agent for the grant and would handle all required federal paperwork, fund distribution, and accounting for the grant. Next, a commitment to promote the program to Poquoson businesses and forward all completed applications to York County for the reimbursement of funds. The application review committee would include at least one Poquoson representative. And finally, conduct a public hearing / informational webinar inviting Poquoson businesses to participate and for them to learn more about the grant and the eligibility requirements. Staff is pleased to offer additional information as needed and will provide an update to City Council when notified of the grant application status by the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development.
So, questions of Dave Callis? Jana, anything?
No.
Okay. Dave, thank you, and thank you for leaning forward on behalf of the small businesses and reaching out and working with our neighboring jurisdictions to enable this to move forward. Thank you. Mr. Vice Mayor.
May I ask Mr. Callis an unrelated question?
Sure.
Some of the residents are asking about the swimming pool. Can you update us on that, or do you know that off the top of your head?
Yes, sir. Happy to. Staff is currently working on a reopening plan that would include the municipal pool. We're very hopeful and confident that we'll be able to open for pool operations on a limited basis later this month. And Gretchen is currently working on that very thing. We're hopeful that we'll all be able to do that sooner rather than later.
Okay, thank you. All right, council, that's all for special presentations, and we'd like to move forward with approval of the minutes section of the meeting. Anybody prepared with a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the minutes of our regular session of May 26, 2020.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded, we approve those minutes. Any questions or comments on those? Seeing none, Evie, please.
Certainly, sir. Councilman Southall,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman,
Aye.
Councilman Hucks,
Aye.
Councilman Green,
Aye.
Councilman Canella,
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews,
Aye.
Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay. Next section of the meeting is new business, and the first here is an ordinance authorizing the issuance of general obligation refunding bonds. Would you like to? Yeah?
Power. There we
Okay.
go. Councilmember Mayor, thank you tonight. You heard from Kyle Lux from Davenport. Thank you for being here, Kyle. Presented in front of you is a strategy that we deployed in midst of this pandemic. The reserve is something that y'all put forth in play many years ago, and it was really set forth for emergencies such as hurricanes. Never once did we thought we'd be faced with using it for a pandemic. But we are in this current epidemic now where we're going to probably have to use it in 21. So with the strategy that we've deployed, we have lowered our interest rate, kept our maturity at the same level, and we have not affected our debt capacity, as Kyle mentioned. So with that, an ordinance is presented to you, providing with the restructuring, refinancing of two debts, 2012 and 2013. The ordinance was prepared by bond counsel, as our city attorney has pointed out, and we entrust with them that they've done everything. This is a little different than the 2018 borrow. Our city clerk asked, we've got to do all this, tell our story. Our story has been told. We have a great story out there, therefore that's why we had a good return on the bidders. So I welcome any questions that you may have on this ordinance.
Any questions? Okay, thank you very much. All right, is anybody prepared to move forward with a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve an ordinance authorizing the issuance of general obligation refunding bonds of the city of Poquoson, Virginia, and providing for the form, details, and payment thereof.
Second.
Motion made and seconded that we approve this ordinance issuing the general obligation refunding bonds that we have discussed at length here in the meeting. Any final questions or comments of council? Okay, hearing none. Evie, please.
Certainly. Councilman Hucks,
Aye.
Councilman Southall,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman,
Aye.
Councilman Green,
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews,
Aye.
Councilman Canella,
Aye.
Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, and Kyle, I know you're going to try and slip out the door again. Thank you for your presentation, your in-depth explanation of what we've done here, and have a safe trip back to Richmond. Okay, thank you. Okay, the next item under new business is a resolution making appointments to the school board. Anybody prepared with a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt a resolution making appointments to the school board with the following names inserted. From the Western Precinct, Michelle B. Sheeler, and from the Central Precinct, Christina F. Helsel. Both of their terms will expire June 30th, 2023.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded that we adopt the resolution making the appointments to the school board. Questions or comments of that? Didn't think I'd get any, so Evie, please.
Certainly. Vice Mayor Freeman,
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews,
Aye.
Councilman Southall,
Aye.
Councilman Canella,
Aye.
Councilman Hucks,
Aye.
Councilman Green,
Aye.
Mayor Hunt. Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay. Next item under new business, and the one that was added earlier in the meeting, is looking forward to moving forward with approval of the VDOT presentation to us on reconstruction and bridge replacement for With Creek Road, change in the scope of that plan, and the transfer of the Poquoson portion of that funding to the city of Hampton. Anybody prepared with a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt a resolution concurring with the proposed change in scope for the With Creek Road project and authorizing a transfer of funds.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. We move forward with this, and any questions or comments by council? Mr. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, just a comment, just for the general public's knowledge. The money that it appears we gave to Hampton from our project money, we would have lost anyway, because once the project scope was adjusted, we would have lost that money. So by doing this, it kept the project moving forward. So just so everybody knows that we didn't take $5 million or so of our dollars and just hand it over to Hampton, we would not have had that money anyway. So just wanted to make that clear for the public.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none. Evie, please.
Certainly. Councilman Hucks,
Aye.
Councilman Southall,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman,
Aye.
Councilman Green,
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews,
Aye.
Councilman Canella,
Aye.
Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
All right, very well. Comments of the city manager. Randy, your staff did an exceptional job this evening, by the way. Except for the guy with the mic.
How about now? You good?
Here we got it.
Yay.
All right, if I have three things this evening. One, just a further clarification right behind the vice mayor. The money that through your action you gave consent to transfer was federal money allocated to this project through the TPO. This was not local tax money or local bond money. And at this point, if that project were to not be able to proceed, remember the first and principal reason that this council has supported this project, there are many reasons, but number one was a second safe all-weather access point in and out of the city. And the all-weather access point is on the Hampton side of this project. So this is a move to support that primary objective. And while we had to do the scope change, unfortunately agree to something less on some of our other but lower priorities, the most important one, the one we began this whole process together even before my arrival 11 years ago, is maintained through this. So didn't want that to be lost. Second, as council and the community is aware, in the past several days, we have been the site as a community of two protest rallies, a small one on Friday at the police department, and a larger one that was held Saturday here on City Hall Avenue. The two times I went by, there were 4 persons participating. I've heard perhaps as many as 12 at one time. The event on Saturday, which I did have the occasion to attend, had at its peak somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 or perhaps a little bit more than 100 people there. I just want to take a minute to commend the police department, also the assistance of the fire department and our neighbors, as well as the event organizers in both instances. They were in good communication with us, and by providing that communication to us, allowed us to assist them and make suggestions that helped them exercise their First Amendment rights in a way that was safe and peaceful for all involved. So I just want to thank everyone that helped make that outcome possible. And we do have we think, a smaller event planned for later this week, and the numbers are much less than the event that we had here on Saturday. And the last I heard of that plan, it was a number of folks who want to stand at a street corner off the sidewalk while not blocking the sidewalk and have signs and things like that, very similar, but in different location to the one that we had Friday at the police department building. Lastly, and the Vice Mayor's question got prime the pump on this, but I'm pleased to stand before you today to share our, what I call our stage one, so as to not be confused with the governor's phase one, phase two plans, but the beginning of our reopening for our local government buildings. As you know, as things moved rapidly against us with the social distancing of phase one and the other restrictions that the governor put in place, we, like all the other jurisdictions, Hampton Roads, closed our offices to the public. That didn't mean we weren't here working, and I commend the many folks on the staff that found creative and innovative ways to keep the services going. But I believe now, in consultation with many people, and including my peer group, that we're ready to begin to reopen our public buildings. So effective next Monday, June 15th, we'll begin essentially the beginning of our reopenings that we'll do during the governor's phase two reopening. So what does that mean? Well, that means that City Hall will be open. It means all of the departments in City Hall will be open to the public for persons to come. We will expand our current curbside and homebound delivery of library materials to also include limited library access inside the building using first the large library conference room. We go small and we'll build. All of the other city departments, including the school administration offices, will be open for business. Council members have observed, I'm sure, that we have put some social distancing things already in place, such as plexiglass at our service counters, to be ready for this. I look forward to the day someday when they come down. But for right now, it's what helps us get open to the public. The only thing that will not open, besides the variation in the library, when we first start out, is the DMV Connect, which is a program that's held in the library, and the DMV Select, which is here. And I know that there are a number of people that wish we would open that, but as long as DMV itself is by limited appointment only, one of the ways that they are managing that workflow is pushing even more people to the few DMV Selects that are open. As council is aware, when this building was designed, social distancing wasn't a design element. We have a pretty narrow hallway, and the two DMV services, DMV Connect and DMV Select, are our two biggest generators of folks in our hallways. So we're going to take a slow approach on that. I do have a meeting with the commissioner tomorrow and to go over his thoughts on how we may be able to expand the services that he's being able to provide. So I'm not saying we won't get there, but we won't get there on June the 15th. We want to manage the crowds in this building and make sure that we don't get overwhelmed by it, because we want to continue to do a good job, and we don't want to back up. Additionally, we would ask any citizens who are coming into our public buildings to wear a facial covering. If they don't have one, we'll have a disposable one that will be available to them. All of our employees that are working within our buildings who are providing face-to-face customer service to our citizens will be expected to wear face coverings as well. And we're gonna move through phase two and try to continue and build upon what we were doing in the past and some of the innovative things we've done recently, including continuing the curbside library pickup for at least a portion of phase two until we have more of the traditional library open. In addition to the City Hall, we'll also be opening the Public Works Administration building, as well as the first floor of the municipal building. So we'll continue, at least for now, to have our fire stations and our police station and the second floor of the municipal building not in open to the public status. I'm hopeful by the time we get to phase 3, we'll be able to remove that as well. But things will be a lot busier around here next week in terms of people in the building, and I think I speak for just about everybody when I say we're really looking forward to that. Let's see, 2 other items. One, it's implicit, but I'll say it explicitly. Beginning June the 15th, this City Council chamber will also be open for public meetings. So we know that we've got some size constraints in this building. Again, it wasn't designed for social distancing, but we can accommodate reasonable crowds. And if we expect that we're going to have a really large crowd during this time, we'll work with you to find a solution that works best for our community. But effective the 15th, so later this month, we've got planning commission meetings, BZA meetings, school board meetings. All of them will be an open to the public status, as will be your next meeting. I think I know I do. I joined the mayor in saying, I hope this is the last closed to the public meeting I'm ever in. And lastly, in part pursuant to the Vice Mayor's comment, I gave Dave and Gretchen the go order to essentially begin the process of putting in place the limited parks and recreation operations, including the pool, and a reminder to the public that the governor's phase 2 orders, guidelines I should say, have some pretty serious restrictions for pools. So my first question to Dave and to Gretchen was, can we operate a pool under these conditions? They said yes, and so we're moving towards it. We hope to have it open prior to the end of the month, and I'm hopeful that sometime between now and the end of the month, Virginia might move into phase 3, and then we'll be able to open and maintain a pool much more similar to what we have traditionally offered. So, but if we wait, we'll run out of summer, and we don't want to do that, and we can't operate under the phase 2 guidelines, and we're moving in that direction. And I apologize for going longer than I normally do, but I figured that you and the public would appreciate knowing how next week is going to be different from the last several weeks.
Yep.
With that, I thank you.
Thank you, Randy. All right, go ahead.
Randy, Pat and I probably need some guidance for our next mobile food pantry. Given the fact that at any given time we have 30 people in that hallway at the Parks and Rec building, social distancing would put us about 180 feet out into the front yard. Do you think we should continue our drive-up delivery for this next one?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll assist you in whatever way is needed.
Okay.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Any comment on when the community center may be open for civic group meetings?
That would be up to Mr. Callis. He has gotten carte blanche in advance to open any of his programs when he can safely do that within the confines of the governor's orders. So put him on the spot if you want, or I can have him follow up with you. Which would you prefer?
I'll have him follow up. I don't want to do him bad.
No, I'm good. I'm good. So what I hear you say there is the community groups that will want to meet, obviously, and welcome them to do that, would have to meet those guidelines of
Yes,
social
sir.
distancing.
And I should clarify, beginning or after June the 15th.
Correct. All right, thank you. Which will be different. All right, thank you, Randy. All right, council directives. We'll start with Jana since you're on the phone. Jana?
I don't have anything to add. I think Randy covered everything that I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Green?
I'd just like to say a big thank you to the Public Works Department and Dave Callis's people for helping us with the mobile food pantry, because since we couldn't go into the building, they have brought the tables and chairs outside, the signs. They've done everything we needed done, and with a smile on their face and very efficiently. So I thank them very much for their help.
Okay, very good. Councilman Southall.
Yes, I would like again to publicly thank Randy and the city staff for their excellent efforts during this COVID-19 situation. The city will note that most of our city functions have progressed fairly normally, okay? We've not been short of trash pickups. The city functions have continued to run, and they've done an excellent job, okay? I'd also like to include Tanya in that for her and her staff working with Davenport and Company, giving us the opportunity to maintain cash flow, okay? Help us keep our AAA bond rating and not extending the city debt way into the future, okay? They've done an excellent job on that, okay? And wish everybody a nice, safe week coming up. It looks like we're going to have some good weather for a change, and look forward to returning to some sense of normal around here.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Canella.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one thing this evening. I just, and I think I can speak on behalf of all of council, congratulate our graduating seniors. I know they've dealt with a hectic senior year, but just know that this council is congratulating them and wishing them much success in the future.
Okay. Councilman Hucks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no comment.
Okay. Mr. Vice Mayor.
Just a couple of quick things. As much as I enjoyed sitting around in my T-shirt and shorts with my cell phone, I am glad to be back to a more normal council meeting, and hopefully we can be back to regular meetings by the time we need to do this again. And just concur with the manager's statements about our fire, police, and event planners on the demonstrations that they had. Were very, very orderly, very, very well managed, coordinated, and just went well.
Okay. The only additional comment I've got is I will tell everybody that COVID was a different challenge for the city, but something that I feel like our staff and our workers, everybody that deals with the city, all of our citizens, they really handled themselves amazingly well. I'm more used to hurricanes and, recovery of something that's very, very short-lived versus this. But the adaptability of everybody was just something to be witnessed, and I had the privilege of witnessing that. I will tell you that through all of this, we've lost some people in our city that at times that would have been a more reason to celebrate their lives. And I don't want to lose one of those, and that is we lost early on and throughout the COVID challenge, we lost Olin Evans. And we haven't had the opportunity to bring that family here. And I want to do that the first meeting in July, and do something to recognize his life and his contributions to our city. With that said, that's the only thing I have. We do have a closed session this evening. We want to talk about two things. One is disposition of publicly held real property, and the other is a personnel matter that we need some legal advice on. If I could get a motion that we proceed to closed session.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we move into closed session for the items you mentioned.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. We proceed into closed session. Roll call, please.
Sure. Councilwoman Andrews?
Aye.
Councilman Canella?
Aye.
Councilman Southall?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman? Councilman Hucks? Aye. Councilman Green?
Aye.
And Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, we're in closed session. All right. Welcome back, those that may have waited for us to come out of closed session. We have completed our closed session, and I'll ask that we certify our closed session, that we went in to talk about two things: publicly held real property in accordance with sections A1 and A3 of the Code of Virginia, and a personnel matter also in accordance with A1 and A7 of the Code of Virginia. If I could get that motion that we certify the closed session, please.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we certify our closed session and that we talk only about what we convened our closed session to talk about.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. We certify our closed session. Evie, please.
Yes, sir, thank you. Councilman Green,
Aye.
Councilman Hucks,
Aye.
Councilman Canella,
Aye.
Councilman Southall,
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman,
Aye.
and Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
And a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Evie, please.
Gladly. Councilman Canella,
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews,
Aye.
Councilman Green,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman,
Aye.
Councilman Southall,
Aye.
Councilman Hucks, Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, thank you very much, and we are adjourned.